The HOA president stood in my driveway at 6:47 a.m. measuring my basketball hoop with a literal ruler while my coffee was still brewing. I'm standing there in my pajamas, steam rising from my mug, watching Karen Whitmore and her two bored lackeys document violations with clipboards, measuring tape, and phone cameras like they're investigating a crime scene. The crisp October morning air bit at my arms as I tried to process this absurdity. "Mr. Torres," Karen announced, her heels clicking against my concrete driveway, "this basketball hoop violates our community's aesthetic standards. You have 72 hours to remove it, or face $500 daily fines." From my living room window, my 8-year-old daughter Emma watched with confused eyes, probably wondering why the mean lady hated her basketball practice so much. What would you do if some power-hungry neighbor showed up measuring your property at dawn? Drop a comment if you've dealt with HOA nightmares and tell me where you're watching from. My name's Mike Torres, I'm 34, work as an electrician, and spend my weekends fixing everything that breaks in my house, which is pretty much everything because I bought what the previous owner called a fixer-upper. 6 months ago, after my divorce finalized, I moved to Willowbrook Estates specifically for one reason. The house had a massive driveway and backyard where my daughter Emma could play. Emma's 8, loves basketball more than ice cream, and stays with me every other week. The day we moved in, installing that regulation basketball hoop was our first father-daughter project. We mixed concrete, leveled the pole, and she helped me tighten every bolt. When we finished, she made her first shot and did this little victory dance that made every blister on my hands worth it. Willowbrook Estates is one of those upper-middle-class subdivisions where every house looks like it was designed by the same architect having the same boring dream. 47 homes built in 2018, monthly HOA dues of $285, which by the way is among the highest in the county. The smell of fresh mulch and the sound of automatic sprinklers basically defines the place. Enter Karen Whitmore. Karen's been HOA president for 3 years, and she runs the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She's also a real estate agent, or was, but we'll get to that later. Lives in the biggest house on the corner lot, drives a white BMW with vanity plates that reads "Sold for You," and carries violation notices in her purse like other people carry breath mints. Here's what I didn't know when I bought my house. Karen had tried to sell it twice before I bought it directly from the owner. She lost $12,000 in potential commission when that sale went around her. The taste of lost money apparently lingers longer than bad coffee. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, Karen takes her patrol walks through the neighborhood. I'm talking clipboard, measuring tape, camera phone, the whole Inspector General routine. Since she took over the board, she's issued 73 violations in 12 months. The previous board? 12 violations total over 2 years. Her greatest hits include fining people for mailbox heights being off by 2 inches, garden gnomes exceeding decorative item limits, and my personal favorite, a $100 fine for leaving garbage cans visible 30 minutes past pickup time. But Emma playing basketball every day after school from 3:30 to 4:30? That apparently crossed some invisible line in Karen's mind. The hoop blocks sight lines and encourages loitering, she told me that morning, handing me a 47-page covenant packet like she was serving a court summons. The papers felt rough and bureaucratic between my fingers. She highlighted section 12.3 in fluorescent yellow. Recreational equipment must be portable and stored when not in use. That's when something clicked for me. I flicked through the packet, smelling that distinct photocopy toner smell, and asked, "Karen, didn't you market this house with the basketball hoop as a selling feature?" Her face went pale. That's different." "Different how?" "The previous owner had different arrangements." I smiled and sipped my now cold coffee. I'd love to see those arrangements in writing. That night, after Emma went to bed, I did what any reasonable person would do. I went down the Google rabbit hole of HOA law. What I found was interesting. Very interesting. The basketball hoop wasn't just some weekend project. The previous owner had installed it in 2021 with a permanent concrete foundation and an actual city building permit. I found the permit online. It specifically noted permanent recreational structure and was signed off by the city inspector. But here's the really good part. I found Karen's own real estate photos from when she tried to sell my house. There she was, marketing copy and all, describing the family-friendly basketball court as a premium feature that enhances community engagement. So, Karen wanted to fine me for a violation that she had literally used to try to sell houses. Time to play some defense. 4 days after Karen's dawn raid, I got my first taste of how she operates when she's really trying to make someone's life miserable. A certified mail envelope arrived, the kind that makes your stomach drop because nobody sends good news via certified mail. Inside was a $500 violation fine with a note that said, "Deadline missed" in red ink, even though I'd submitted a written request for the appeal process within 24 hours. But Karen wasn't done. She'd scheduled an emergency HOA board meeting for the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. You know, when most working parents are actually working. Then came the robocall to every household about compliance issues affecting property values. Nothing says unbiased hearing like a preemptive PR campaign. I decided to do my homework. Tuesday morning I drove to the county records office, that beige building downtown where bureaucracy goes to die. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I dug through property files, and what I found was pure gold. The basketball hoop's concrete foundation was installed in 2021 with a proper city building permit. The permit specifically noted permanent recreational structure and was signed by the city inspector. Here's the knowledge nugget. Grandfathered permanent structures can't be removed without violating city building codes, which override HOA restrictions. Armed with this evidence, I showed up to Karen's kangaroo court meeting. 8 people in a room designed for 50. Karen had prepared a slideshow titled "Property Value Threats in Our Community," because apparently my daughter's basketball practice was a threat to national security. She showed pictures of my house labeled as Problem Property 1 and claimed that similar basketball hoops had caused 12% property value drops. When I asked for her sources, she said the data was proprietary. That's when Mrs. Chen, this retired teacher who lives in House 23, stood up and dropped the first bomb. "Karen," she said, adjusting her glasses, "doesn't your son have a basketball hoop in your driveway?" The room went dead silent. You could hear the ancient air conditioning unit struggling in the background. Karen's face flushed. That's different. Ours is aesthetically integrated." Bob Martinez, a contractor who lives on House 15, chuckled. "Aesthetically integrated? It's the same exact hoop from the same exact store." Janet Sullivan, a nurse from House 8, chimed in. "My kids love playing with Emma. She's the most polite child in the neighborhood." I watched Karen realize she was losing control of her own meeting. The smell of desperation was stronger than the stale coffee someone had brought in a thermos. So she pivoted, badly. "This isn't about basketball," she announced, like she was revealing some grand conspiracy. "It's about precedent. If we allow one violation, everyone will install trampolines, swing sets, above-ground pools. Where does it end?" Then she made her biggest mistake. She threatened to fine anyone who supported non-compliance and announced they'd vote at the next meeting to either remove my hoop or hire an attorney to force removal. That's when I stood up. "Thank you all for coming out on a Tuesday afternoon," I said, making eye contact with each neighbor. "I appreciate everyone taking time from work to discuss my daughter's basketball practice." I pulled out a manila folder, always bring props to these things, and continued. "I've done some research on HOA law and I discovered something interesting. Karen, you marketed my house with this basketball hoop as a selling feature. In fact," I pulled out her own real estate photos, "you described it as a premium family-friendly basketball court that enhances community engagement." The room erupted. Mrs. Chen started laughing. Bob Martinez shook his head. Janet Sullivan just stared at Karen. "So here's my question, Karen. I'm happy to discuss this further, but first, why don't you explain to everyone why you are advertising covenant violations to sell houses?" Karen's face went from red to purple. She grabbed her gavel, yes, she had an actual gavel, and slammed it down. "This meeting is adjourned." As people filed out, Mrs. Chen approached me. "Karen tried to fine us for our garden gnomes last month," she whispered. "Said they violated height restrictions." Martinez joined us. "She's been targeting anyone who didn't vote for her re-election. My work trailer apparently violates commercial storage rules." Janet Sullivan nodded. "Halloween decorations past October 31st. That was my violation." I looked around at these 3 neighbors, good people who just wanted to live their lives without harassment, and realized something important. This wasn't about basketball hoops. This was about a bully who'd figured out how to weaponize bureaucracy. Time to level the playing field. Auctioning Karen's retaliation came swift and petty, like a toddler throwing toys when they don't get their way. The next morning, I got a call from the city building inspector. "Mr. Torres, we received a complaint about unlicensed electrical work at your property." I nearly choked on my breakfast cereal. I am a licensed electrician. It's literally my job. "Yes, sir, we figured that out pretty quickly." The complainant seemed unusually motivated. Then came violation notice number 2. My work van allegedly violated commercial vehicle restrictions. Karen claimed commercial vehicles were prohibited in driveways between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. My electrician van with company logo and tools inside was apparently an eyesore that threatened the neighborhood's delicate aesthetic balance. But Karen wasn't done playing whack-a-mole with my supporters. Mrs. Chen got a violation for garden gnomes exceeding height restrictions. Bob Martinez got dinged for his work trailer being commercial storage. Janet Sullivan received a fine for Halloween decorations displayed past October 31st, and this was November 2nd. The pattern was obvious. Help Mike, get punished. That's when I decided to fight fire with public records requests. I spent my lunch break at City Hall requesting every HOA complaint filed in the past 2 years. The clerk, a friendly woman who smelled like vanilla perfume, handed me a stack of papers that told quite a story. Karen had filed 23 complaints with the city in 8 months. The previous HOA board had filed 3 complaints total over 5 years. Either Willowbrook Estates had suddenly become a hotbed of criminal activity, or Karen had a serious power problem. But her commercial vehicle gambit was where she really overplayed her hand. I spent an evening researching state HOA law, the kind of thrilling Tuesday night most people spend watching Netflix. What I found was beautiful. State right-to-work statutes specifically protect tradespeople from HOA vehicle restrictions related to their primary employment. And here's the knowledge nugget. HOAs cannot restrict vehicles related to a resident's primary employment, even if they have commercial markings. The law exists specifically to prevent discrimination against blue-collar workers. But wait, it gets better. Karen's own car violated the same logic she was using against me. Her white BMW had magnetic real estate door signs and an MLS lockbox in the back seat. If my electrician van was a commercial vehicle, then her mobile real estate office definitely qualified. I started documenting everything. Every violation, every fine, every ridiculous complaint. Then I created a shared Google Doc called Willowbrook HOA Violation Tracker and invited every neighbor to contribute their experiences. The response was immediate and devastating. Within 48 hours, 14 households had reported 31 violations in the past year. Karen's board had issued $18,700 in fines. The previous board's total over 3 years, $1,200. Tom Bradley from House 31, $300 for leaving garbage cans out 2 hours past pickup. Lisa Park from House 19 had to repaint our front door because cream wasn't approved beige. The pattern was unmistakable. Question Karen's authority, get fined into submission. Karen called another emergency board meeting to discuss what she called resident harassment. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. "Mr. Torres is organizing against lawful HOA governance," she announced to the 4 people who showed up. "We need new rules preventing residents from coordinating complaints against board decisions." That's when I stood up with my folder full of documentation, every violation notice, every fine, every complaint, organized chronologically with color-coded tabs, because I'm an electrician and we like things that work properly. "Karen," I said, "I've been consulting with an HOA attorney." Her face went pale. "Turns out you've been violating state HOA governance laws, required 10-day notice for fine hearings, never provided to anyone. Board meetings scheduled to exclude working residents? That's discrimination. Using violation fines as revenue generation instead of actual code enforcement? Also illegal." I let that sink in while the air conditioning unit hummed overhead. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm not removing my basketball hoop, but I am removing this board." Karen's voice cracked. "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. It's called a petition for board removal. Needs signatures from 30% of homeowners." I smiled. I already have 42%. The room went dead silent except for the sound of Karen's pen clicking nervously. "Oh, and Karen, about those violation fines you've been collecting? Turns out when an HOA board exceeds its authority, individual board members can be held personally liable for damages. That's when Karen made her biggest mistake yet. "I'll destroy you," she hissed. And that, folks, is when I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. When someone threatens to destroy you at an HOA meeting, you know they've officially lost their mind. But Karen wasn't done proving just how unhinged she could get. The next week, she hired a $400 per hour HOA attorney using community funds, without a vote, without notice, without any legal authority whatsoever. The cease and desist letter arrived via FedEx, demanding I stop interfering with HOA business. The legal letterhead looked impressive until you realized it was basically an expensive way to say, "Please stop making us look incompetent." But Karen's nuclear option was placing a lien on my house for unpaid fines, $2,100 and counting, she claimed. I discovered this when I tried to refinance Emma's college savings account, and the bank told me there was a cloud on my title. Here's another knowledge nugget. Improper liens can result in HOA board members being held personally liable for damages, including attorney fees and credit repair costs. Karen had just made this very personal. I scheduled a consultation with Rebecca Martinez, an HOA specialist attorney, no relation to my contractor buddy Bob, but apparently Martinez is the go-to name for people who solve problems. Her office smelled like fresh coffee and legal victory. "This is the most egregious HOA overreach case I've seen in 15 years, Rebecca said, flipping through my documentation. "Your neighbor has violated 12 different state statutes. Potential damages range from $25,000 to $50,000, plus attorney fees." While I was getting legal ammunition, Karen was doubling down on crazy. She scheduled a special assessment vote requiring $500 from each household for legal compliance costs. The notice gave residents 15 days to pay and threatened liens for non-payment. She used COVID as an excuse to hold the vote via email only, which conveniently excluded older residents like Mrs. Chen who weren't tech-savvy. But I wasn't sitting idle either. I hosted what I called a Willowbrook information meeting at my house, democracy in action. 23 residents showed up, which was the largest neighborhood gathering in the subdivision's history. The smell of grilled burgers mixed with autumn air as people shared their Karen horror stories. Tom Bradley. She called my employer claiming noise complaints. That never happened. Lisa Park tried to get me to spy on other neighbors' activities. Mrs. Shen asked me to report anyone who supported Mike. That's when we discovered the systematic targeting pattern. Karen had been finding families with children 3 times more often than empty nesters. Single parents got violations at a 73% rate. Households with non-white residents, 78% violation rate. Meanwhile, Karen's friends and supporters, 0 violations, not 1. But the real smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen found a crumpled paper in the street after garbage day, Karen's handwritten notes from 6 months ago. Target list: divorced dad, basketball, old teacher, gnomes, contractor, truck, nurse, dead list, and at the bottom, goal: 810 house turnover this year equals $95.00 K plus commissions. The woman had been treating our neighborhood like her personal real estate farm. Karen tried to infiltrate our meeting by sending board member Janet Morrison to take photos and document troublemakers. When Bob Martinez recognized this as witness intimidation, we voted to ban all current board members from future meetings. Janet Morrison threatened everyone with conspiracy violations, which isn't even a real thing in HOA law, but sounded scary enough to worry some people. That's when Karen played her most desperate card yet. She called my ex-wife. "Your daughter isn't safe with Mike," she told her. "He's creating a dangerous environment, hosting meetings with angry neighbors. Emma could get hurt." When that didn't work, Karen filed a false police report claiming I'd been aggressive at HOA meetings. The responding officer, Rodriguez, reviewed the situation and basically told Karen she was wasting city resources. "Ma'am," he said, "we've had multiple calls about HOA disputes on this street. Maybe y'all should try talking instead of calling police." But Karen's biggest mistake was her systematic targeting of anyone who questioned her authority, because while she was busy playing petty dictator, I was building something she couldn't control: community solidarity. 31 households signed a petition demanding her resignation. When Karen claimed the petition was invalid and refused to schedule a removal vote, Residents threatened to stop paying HOA dues entirely. The smell of Karen's desperation was stronger than the diesel fumes from Bob's work truck. That's when I realized something important. Bullies like Karen derive their power from isolation and intimidation. Take away the isolation, document the intimidation, and suddenly they're just sad people throwing expensive tantrums. But Karen wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. She was about to make one final play that would expose everything. Sometimes the universe hands you a gift wrapped in bureaucratic incompetence. This was one of those times. While digging through HOA financial records, because yes, homeowners have the right to review those, I discovered something that made Karen's basketball hoop obsession make perfect sense. Her real estate license had expired 8 months ago. 8 months. She'd been showing houses, collecting commissions, and conducting business with an expired license. That's not just a paperwork problem, it's fraud. But it got better. I cross-referenced the addresses of every violation she'd issued with her current real estate listings. The pattern was surgical in its precision. She'd find people, then magically appear with business cards, suggesting they might want a fresh start in a new neighborhood. Mrs. Chen's crumpled paper wasn't just angry notes, it was a business plan. Bob Martinez offered to help review the HOA books because contractors know how to spot financial shenanigans. What we found made my electrician's sense of proper wiring look amateur compared to Karen's creative accounting. Her husband's landscaping company had received $23,000 in emergency maintenance contracts over 18 months. No competitive bidding, no approval votes, no invoices for completed work. Here's the financial knowledge nugget. HOA board members cannot award contracts to family businesses without disclosure and competitive bidding. It's called self-dealing, and it's illegal in all 50 states. But the smoking gun was buried in Karen's own trash. Mrs. Chen, bless her retired teacher heart, had developed quite the intelligence-gathering operation. During her evening walks, she'd notice papers blowing out of Karen's garbage cans. Being a good neighbor, she'd pick up the litter. One piece of paper changed everything. Karen's handwritten notes from 6 months ago: target list, divorced dad, basketball, old teacher, gnomes, contractor, truck, nurse, decorations. Below that, create violations, pressure to sell, commission opportunities. And at the bottom, goal, 8-10 house turnover this year equals $95. 0 cents, K plus commissions. The woman had turned HOA enforcement into a systematic harassment campaign designed to generate real estate business. I created a spreadsheet of violations by household demographics. The results were damning. Single parents, 73% received violations. Families with children, 68%. Non-white households, 78%. Elderly residents, 23%. Karen's friends and supporters, 0%. This wasn't random HOA power tripping. This was organized discrimination with a profit motive. Rebecca Martinez reviewed the new evidence during an emergency consultation. Mike, this isn't just HOA overreach anymore. We're looking at potential civil rights violations under the Fair Housing Act, real estate fraud for unlicensed activity, and possible RICO considerations for using an official position to generate illegal business. When I shared these findings with our neighborhood coalition, the reaction was immediate and unified. 32 residents attended the emergency meeting, more people than Karen had managed to get out for anything, ever. The collective aha moment was audible. Mrs. Chen slapped the table. She told me my house would be more marketable without garden gnomes. Tom Bradley, she suggested we might want a fresh start in a new neighborhood right after our violation notice. Lisa Park, she handed me her business card when she delivered our fine. Bob Martinez pulled out his phone. I recorded our conversation when she offered to make my trailer violation disappear if I'd bid on HOA projects. Single-party consent state, so it's legal evidence. That's when we realized the scope of Karen's operation. She wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She was running an illegal business using community authority to harass residents into selling their homes, then collecting commissions on both ends. The room fell silent except for the hum of my refrigerator and the distant sound of Emma bouncing her basketball in the backyard. So what do we do? Mrs. Chen asked. I looked around at 32 neighbors who'd been systematically targeted, harassed, and manipulated by someone they'd trusted with community leadership. "We don't just remove Karen from the HOA board," I said. "We remove her from the real estate business entirely." And that's when we started planning something Karen never saw coming. My kitchen became mission control for what I like to call Operation Basketball Justice. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with printer ink as we turned my dining room table into a war room covered with HOA documents, legal research, and Bob Martinez's construction sketches. Our core team was like something out of a feel-good movie. Mike the electrician, Bob the contractor, Mrs. Chen the retired teacher turned intelligence analyst, and Rebecca Martinez the HOA attorney, who'd agreed to work pro bono because she'd never seen fraud this blatant in 15 years of practice. Rebecca outlined our three-pronged legal strategy while Janet Sullivan, the nurse, took notes in handwriting that actually looked professional. First, a civil lawsuit against Karen personally for harassment, fraud, and civil rights violations. Second, criminal referral to the district attorney for unlicensed real estate activity and embezzlement. Third, a federal fair housing complaint for discriminatory enforcement patterns. Here's the legal knowledge nugget. Attacking from multiple jurisdictions prevents the defendant from controlling the narrative or forum shopping for friendly judges. When you're right, make them fight you everywhere at once. But the real genius came from Bob Martinez. "Mike," he said, spreading construction drawings across my kitchen counter, "instead of removing your basketball hoop, what if we built something Karen really can't argue with?" His plan was beautiful in its simplicity. Convert my entire backyard into a regulation community basketball court. Full-size court, professional goals, lighting, bleacher seating. Estimated cost, $35,000 to $45,000. But Bob offered to do the construction at cost, using his crew. "City permits for community recreational facilities are perfectly legal," he explained, "and HOA covenants actually encourage community building activities. She can't argue against something that brings the neighborhood together." The technical requirements were straightforward: 94 feet by 50 feet for a regulation court. My lot was 120 by 80. Concrete pad, drainage, electrical for lighting, proper setbacks from property lines. Here's the DIY knowledge nugget. Community improvement projects are often exempt from HOA restrictions because they benefit everyone, not just the homeowner. Mrs. Chen organized what she called the documentation task force. Every violation, fine, and harassment incident got formally recorded with dates, witnesses, and photographs. Tom Bradley handled video testimonials from affected residents. Lisa Park managed our social media campaign with the hashtag #WillowBrookJustice. The funding strategy was surprisingly simple. I had $28,000 in divorce settlement savings earmarked for Emma's future. A GoFundMe campaign titled "Help Dad Build Dream Court After HOA Harassment" raised another $12,000 in 48 hours. Local businesses started offering material discounts when they heard the story. But the psychological warfare element was my favorite part. "Karen's power comes from intimidation and isolation," Mrs. Chen observed during one of our evening planning sessions. "What if we demonstrated community solidarity in a way she can't ignore?" We ordered yard signs reading "We support our neighbors" and planted them throughout the subdivision. 34 households displayed them within 24 hours. The visual impact was immediate. Karen was the only house without a sign, making her isolation obvious to everyone driving through. Rebecca Martinez handled the permit research while I worked my day job. City planning confirmed residential basketball courts were allowed with proper permits, no HOA approval required for city-permitted structures. Best part, grandfathered structure protections applied to expansions of existing permanent installations. The timeline was aggressive but doable. Legal complaint filing in week 1, media interviews in week 2, city permit applications simultaneously, construction beginning week 3 if permits were approved, and a grand opening tournament in week 6. "Karen will escalate before she surrenders," Rebecca warned us during our final strategy session. "Expect her to get desperate and possibly destructive." We planned for contingencies. If Karen filed an injunction against construction, we'd continue with the legal case. If she escalated to criminal complaints, we had documented evidence of her fraud. If she tried property damage, Bob was installing security cameras throughout the construction zone. The emotional preparation was harder than the logistics. I sat Emma down one evening while she practiced free throws on our soon-to-be-expanded court. "Sweetie, sometimes grown-ups act mean when they don't get their way. We're going to fix the problem, but it might get complicated first." Emma stopped dribbling and looked at me with those serious 8-year-old eyes. "Daddy, maybe we should invite Karen to play basketball. Maybe she's just sad." And that's when I realized my daughter had better conflict resolution skills than most adults. Sunday evening, our core team met for final coordination. Rebecca provided the legal update that changed everything. Karen's attorney has withdrawn from her case. Apparently, he'd discovered the extent of her illegal activities and didn't want his law firm associated with the mess. "She's now representing herself," Rebecca added. "In legal terms, that's like performing surgery on yourself. It never ends well. When attorneys abandon their clients, it usually means the case is unwinnable. Time to break ground." Karen's attorney, abandoning her, was like watching someone's last lifeline snap. She got stuck with a $3,200 final bill and the devastating realization that she was personally liable for all legal costs because she'd signed a personal guarantee. 3 law firms declined to take her case after reviewing the evidence we'd compiled. Turns out lawyers don't like representing clients who've committed multiple felonies while generating their legal problems. But while Karen was frantically lawyer shopping, my permit sailed through city planning in record time. Finally, the building inspector told me, someone who actually filed paperwork correctly. My permit included a variance for evening lighting until 9 p.m., perfect for after-work games. When Karen tried to appeal the permit, she was told she had no legal standing as a non-adjacent neighbor. That's when Karen went full scorched earth. She filed anonymous complaints with every city department she could think of: fire marshal, health department, zoning board, parking enforcement. Each department dutifully sent inspectors who found 0 violations and started noting that complaints appeared frivolous. The fire marshal actually warned me, "Someone's trying to cause you problems. Document everything because false reports are a misdemeanor." Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp, Bob Martinez's crew arrived with concrete trucks. The rumble of diesel engines and the beep 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 of backing trucks created a symphony of progress that brought the entire neighborhood outside. Kids rode bikes around the equipment. Neighbors brought coffee to the workers. Mrs. Chen set up a folding chair like she was watching a parade. Even the mailman stopped to ask what we were building. Karen stood in her yard with binoculars, photographing everything like she was documenting war crimes. The community support was overwhelming. Henderson Hardware donated $800 in concrete sealer and tools. Sportsman's Warehouse provided professional basketball goals worth $1,200 retail. Miller Electric installed the court lighting system for free after their owner heard our story on local radio. Here's the business knowledge nugget. Local companies love supporting community projects, especially when there's a clear David versus Goliath narrative. Good publicity plus good causes equals good business. Karen's response was to print flyers claiming our basketball court would destroy neighborhood character. She left them on every doorstep at 6 a.m., which technically violated city soliciting ordinances. The flyers included completely fabricated statistics about recreational noise impacts and property value decreases. Several neighbors called the city about unlicensed soliciting violations. Even her own harassment was generating violations. Tuesday evening, Channel 7 reporter Jenny Walsh arrived for our scheduled interview. Perfect timing. Bob's crew was laying the court's surface while a dozen neighbors gathered to watch. Emma demonstrated her basketball skills for the camera, making shot after shot while explaining how much the court meant to her. Mrs. Chen provided historical context about Karen's violation campaign. Tom Bradley showed his Halloween decoration fine from November 2nd. Bob Martinez explained the embezzlement evidence. Janet Sullivan described stress, health impacts from constant harassment. Jenny Walsh interviewed 8 different households, each with their own Karen horror story. The news crew spent 3 hours gathering footage, including drone shots of the beautiful new court taking shape. That's when Karen made her biggest tactical error. She called the television station, claiming biased reporting and threatened to sue them for defamation. Channel 7's legal department reviewed the story, found everything documented and factual, then added Karen's threatening phone call to their broadcast segment. But Karen wasn't done with desperate measures. She called my employer, claiming I was doing unpermitted electrical work and stealing company customers. My boss Tony called me laughing. "Some woman named Karen says you're running a side business. She's called 3 times this week. Tony reviewed the situation, realized what was happening, and offered me the company truck for the basketball court electrical work. Anyone who fights HOA bullies gets company support, he said. Instruction week was like watching a community come alive. Day 1, concrete foundation poured perfectly level. Day 2, Karen called city inspectors claiming improper drainage. Day 3, inspector approved drainage and warned about false complaints. Day 4, court surface installed, goals mounted. Day 5, lighting system connected and tested. The transformation was visible from space. What started as my backyard was becoming something that belonged to everyone. But Karen's final desperate move crossed a line nobody should cross. Thursday evening, while Emma practiced on the nearly completed court, Karen marched across the street and shouted at my 8-year-old daughter to stop making noise. 8 neighbors witnessed a grown woman screaming at a child for playing basketball on a court specifically built for children to play basketball. Mrs. Chen intervened immediately. "That's enough, Karen. Leave the child alone." Karen's response? "I'll sue every one of you." Tom Bradley was already recording on his phone. When Karen noticed the camera, she tried to grab it, committing assault on video. That's when I called the police non-emergency line. We need help with an unstable neighbor who just assaulted a child and an elderly woman. Some lines you just don't cross. Officer Rodriguez arrived within 10 minutes and immediately recognized the escalating pattern from his previous calls to our street. Karen was still ranting about property rights and noise violations when he asked to see the video Tom Bradley had recorded. Watching a police officer's expression change from routine call to, "Oh, this lady has serious problems," was almost worth the months of harassment. He issued Karen a formal trespass warning and advised her she was approaching criminal harassment territory. Thursday night, Karen received the trespass warning. Friday morning, she discovered Channel 7's news van parked outside my house for the follow-up story. The smell of her desperation was stronger than Bob's diesel equipment. Friday, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. horror. Neighbor wars over basketball hoop aired citywide. The segment was devastating. Emma shooting baskets on the beautiful new court, explaining how much basketball meant to her. My calm explanation of Karen's systematic harassment campaign, clear documentation of embezzlement, illegal fines, and discriminatory enforcement. Karen was portrayed exactly as she was, an unhinged HOA dictator who'd lost all perspective. The social media explosion was immediate. Video clips shared 15,000 times in 24 hours. Horror trending locally on Twitter. A Reddit thread titled "Psycho HOA President vs. Basketball Dad" got 50,000 upvotes with Karen's real name mentioned repeatedly in comments. Professional consequences hit fast. The state real estate board received 23 complaints about her unlicensed activity. Former clients recognized her from the news story. 2 pending house sales fell through when buyers discovered their seller's reputation. Her husband's landscaping business lost 3 contracts by Monday morning. But the weekend community celebration was pure magic. Saturday afternoon, court completion party with 47 neighbors attending. Emma cut the ribbon with oversized scissors borrowed from the city mayor's office. Local food trucks donated services after seeing the news story. Pickup basketball games continued until the 9 p.m. lighting cutoff, with kids and adults playing together under professional-grade LED lights. The transformation was incredible. What had started as one family's fight against bureaucratic bullying had become a community celebration of what neighborhoods could be when people supported each other. Karen's response was to try sabotaging the court lighting with a garden hose Saturday night. She apparently forgot about the security cameras Bob had installed. Sunday morning brought crystal clear footage of her creating electrical hazards with water around lighting circuits. When I filed the formal vandalism report, Officer Rodriguez reviewed our case history. 12 police calls involving Karen in 8 weeks. He contacted the district attorney's office about escalating criminal behavior and issued Karen a criminal citation for attempted destruction of property. But Karen's anonymous online harassment campaign showed just how unhinged she'd become. She created fake social media accounts to post false accusations about court noise, property damage, and child endangerment. Tech-savvy Tom Bradley traced the IP addresses directly to Karen's home internet connection and documented 47 defamatory posts across multiple platforms. Rebecca Martinez filed our comprehensive civil lawsuit, harassment, defamation, embezzlement, civil rights violations, $75,000 in damages, plus attorney fees. Court date? December 15th. When Karen began driving by my house multiple times daily, parking across the street to photograph children playing, and following Emma's school bus route, I filed for a restraining order. The bus driver had reported suspicious behavior from a white BMW with real estate signs. Even Karen's family was done with her obsession. Her husband Jim confronted her about the behavior that was destroying their reputation and finances. He threatened divorce unless she sought mental health treatment. Their teenage son Tyler openly rebelled, playing basketball at my court daily. When Karen grounded him, he left to stay with a friend's family. The community organized an informal security patrol to ensure no child was alone when Karen was lurking around. Parents coordinated schedules. Mrs. Chen created a phone tree for immediate incident reporting. Bob Martinez installed additional lighting around my property perimeter. The district attorney's financial crimes unit opened a formal embezzlement investigation, subpoenaing HOA bank records and Karen's personal accounts. They discovered $31,000 in questionable transactions over 18 months. A grand jury was considering felony charges. Karen's attorney shopping became increasingly desperate. She contacted 12 law firms. Only one budget attorney charging $150 per hour agreed to take the case. After reviewing the evidence, he immediately recommended settlement. Karen's response? Fight to the death. Meanwhile, I announced our neighborhood Thanksgiving tournament, with proceeds benefiting the local children's shelter. Registration opened citywide with expected participation over 200. Local sports stores donated prizes, trophies, and refreshments. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting to ban commercial activities. 3 people attended. She attempted to pass new rules without a quorum, creating meeting minutes that showed her talking to an essentially empty room. Channel 7 returned for tournament coverage, interviewing Karen's expanding circle of victims. The new temporary HOA board had been elected, Mrs. Chen as president, Bob Martinez as treasurer, Janet Sullivan as secretary. The contrast was perfect. Karen, completely isolated, facing criminal charges, her family falling apart, while the community she'd tried to control was thriving without her. But I should have known Karen would try one final desperate act. Thanksgiving tournament day arrived with the crisp November air that makes basketball sound perfect bouncing off concrete. By 8 a.m., we had 240 registered participants from across the city, 3 news crews, and the mayor throwing the ceremonial first shot. Emma served as honorary tournament director, wearing a custom jersey that read Court Builder on the back. The smell of food truck breakfast burritos mixed with the autumn leaves as 16 different age divisions prepared for games running continuously on 3 courts. Bob had organized additional portable hoops to handle the crowd. For the first time in 8 months, we had a neighborhood event without Karen's interference. Her house sat dark with sheets covering the windows. Her husband Jim was seen loading a moving truck in their garage. Tyler, their teenage son, played in the tournament wearing a Team Mike t-shirt. The community transformation was complete. Local restaurants donated food, creating a festival atmosphere. We raised $3,400 for the children's shelter by lunchtime. Kids and adults played together, while parents shared stories about the neighborhood's dramatic improvement. That's when Detective Sarah Morrison arrived. She was investigating Karen for embezzlement charges and needed to speak with me about financial evidence. The district attorney was preparing a formal indictment for the $31,000 in fraudulent transaction. "Mr. Torres," she said, "we appreciate your documentation. Cases this well organized make prosecution much easier." But at 2:30 p.m., during the championship games, Karen made her final appearance. She arrived with some budget attorney in a cheap suit, marched onto the court during an active game, and demanded the tournament be shut down immediately. She claimed we were violating an emergency injunction, which didn't exist, and attempted to confiscate the basketball goals as HOA property. 150 people watched this meltdown unfold. "This court was built with stolen community funds," Karen screamed at the crowd of families enjoying a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I calmly pulled out my folder, yes, I still carried my documentation everywhere, and produced receipts showing every dollar of personal funding. "Karen, these are the receipts. $38,000 from my divorce settlement and community donations. 0 HOA money." Her attorney realized she'd lied about basic case facts and started backing toward his car. That's when Karen completely lost it. She screamed at children to get off her property, except it was my property, as legally documented in the deed I'd brought copies of. She attempted to deflate basketballs with her car keys while kids watched in confusion. Mrs. Chen, bless her heart, tried one last intervention. "Karen, you need help. This isn't normal behavior." Karen's response was to lunge toward the Channel 7 camera crew. Bob Martinez stepped between her and the equipment, preventing what would have been assault on live television. That's when Detective Morrison stepped forward. "Aaron Whitmore, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, harassment, and stalking." The handcuffs clicked shut in front of 150 neighbors, 3 news cameras, and the mayor of our city. The charges: $31,000 in fraudulent HOA transactions, unlicensed real estate activity, systematic harassment, and stalking behavior. Bail was set at $25,000. The restraining order became automatic. Court date: December 20th. The crowd's reaction was spontaneous applause as Karen was led away crying. Children asked their parents why the mean lady was upset. Emma told the reporter, "Now everyone can play basketball without being scared." The tournament resumed within 30 minutes. Jim Whitmore approached me during cleanup, his face showing the exhaustion of months dealing with his wife's obsession. "Mike, I should have stopped this months ago. I'm sorry for what she put your family through." He revealed that Karen had stopped taking anxiety medication in September and had been spiraling ever since. He was filing for divorce and moving out of state with Tyler. The championship game became an exhibition match, Emma's team versus high school varsity players. She scored 12 points and made the final shot to enthusiastic cheers. When Mayor Williams presented her with the MVP trophy, the crowd chanted, "MVP! MVP!" until she blushed. Detective Morrison provided additional details during the evening cleanup. Karen had used HOA funds for personal real estate marketing, created fake invoices from her husband's company, and faced additional charges for tax evasion. Total potential prison time: 3 to 5 years. As the sun set over our beautiful basketball courts, I sat on the bleachers watching Emma practice free throws under the LED lights we'd installed, the same lights Karen had tried to sabotage with a garden hose. "Daddy," Emma said, pausing her practice, "I'm glad the mean lady can't hurt people anymore." I realized this had started with protecting my daughter's joy in playing basketball. It ended with protecting an entire community from someone who'd forgotten that power should serve people, not the other way around. Sometimes the best victory isn't revenge, it's just building something beautiful and letting the community decide what matters. 3 months later, February brought the kind of crisp winter evening that makes basketball sounds echo perfectly off concrete and bare trees. Karen pleaded guilty to embezzlement and was sentenced to 18 months in prison. She served 4 months before being released on probation with 500 hours of community service. Ironically, she's now picking up trash in public parks. The $47,000 in restitution was paid through the forced sale of her house. A permanent restraining order means she can't contact any Willowbrook residents. Our basketball court has become the heartbeat of the neighborhood. Every afternoon, 15 to 20 children gather for pickup games. Weekend tournaments are now monthly traditions, raising over $12,000 for local charities. Suburban Success Stories magazine featured us in their community transformation issue. Emma made her school's varsity team as an 8th grader, the youngest player in school history. She practices every evening on our court, and I coach the neighborhood youth league that formed naturally around our weekend games. The sound of her basketball bouncing has become the neighborhood's evening rhythm. My relationship with Janet Sullivan blossomed through our shared community work. Turns out fighting HOA tyrants together builds stronger foundations than most dating apps. We're taking things slow, but Emma approves, especially since Janet brings the best post-game snacks. Mrs. Chen transformed from intelligence analyst to neighborhood historian. She's documenting the Karen Wars for the community archives and teaches conflict resolution workshops at the local community center. Her garden gnomes are now neighborhood landmarks. People give directions based on turn left at Mrs. Chen's gnomes. Bob Martinez parlayed his basketball court builder reputation into 12 additional residential court contracts across the city. He hired 2 more crew members and sponsors 3 youth sports leagues. His work truck still parks in his driveway without any HOA violations. The children's perspective is my favorite part of this whole story. Emma interviewed neighborhood kids for a school project about community change. Tyler Whitmore, Karen's son, became one of my closest allies and visits every summer. The court serves 47 children from surrounding neighborhoods, and we haven't had a single bullying incident since Karen's removal. Our new HOA board focuses on actual community improvement. Monthly dues dropped to $150, violation fines were eliminated entirely, and we built a neighborhood playground through volunteer labor. Our annual Unity Day celebration, each November 28th, draws hundreds of people. The legal and financial lessons from our experience have helped other communities. My documentation system has been adopted by HOA reform groups in 6 states. Here's the key takeaway. Always request detailed financial records before buying in any HOA community. Transparency prevents tyranny. Rebecca Martinez created an HOA rights workshop for homeowners after our case became precedent in 3 subsequent HOA abuse lawsuits. The state legislature is considering an HOA Reform Act, inspired by our documentation showing systematic violations. Individual resistance really can create systemic change. Channel 7's follow-up story, From HOA Hell to Community Heaven, won a regional journalism award. Emma was interviewed by Kids Sports Network about overcoming adversity, and our story was featured on the David v. Goliath podcast series. Looking back, the lessons are clear. Standing up to bullies protects everyone, not just yourself. Community solidarity defeats individual harassment every time. Sometimes the best solution is building something better than what they're trying to tear down. And always, always document everything. Truth is your best weapon. Emma, now 9 years old and team captain, summed it up perfectly when asked what she learned. Mean people are usually just scared people, but scared people can still hurt you, so grown-ups have to stop them. And basketball makes everything better. Last week, I received a call from a desperate homeowner in the adjacent subdivision. Their HOA president is demanding removal of their children's swing set, issuing fines for unapproved recreational equipment. "Sir, I heard you're the guy who beats crazy HOA presidents," he said. I looked out my window at our thriving basketball courts, children playing under the lights we'd installed, parents chatting on the bleachers Bob had built, Mrs. Chen keeping score with her clipboard of encouragement instead of violations. "Well," I told him, "I do know a thing or two about that." Drop in the comments if you've ever dealt with HOA nightmares. Share your craziest neighbor story, because we read every single comment. Hit subscribe if you want to see more justice-served stories where communities fight back against petty tyrants. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is building something beautiful and letting joy win.